I can't explain how I knew that paper was meant for me. I just knew that it was. Besides, Mom and Dad Wilson, my foster parents, are not the sort of people who get mysterious notes. I'm the biggest adventure they ever had in their lives. I think when they took me as a foster kid, they were expecting somebody like Tom Sawyer. I wasn't much of a replacement. Dad Wilson did teach me to raise bait, and it's kind of fun because I like bugs and worms. But I hate sitting by a creek for hours while I itch and twitch, waiting for some fish to fall for it and get the bait. Fishermen always say it's the thrill of the challenge. Being smart enough to bag a big one. The way I see it, it's pretty sad for a guy to think it's a big deal to outwit a fish. But I did go fishing with Dad Wilson, especially after I became a Christian, because Mom and Dad Wilson don't believe much about God. I tried to be especially good so that they'd notice it and listen when I talked to them about it. But it didn't work too well because I still lost my temper sometimes, and every time I lost my temper, I could see that they were figuring I hadn't changed at all. I used to be really bad, which was why I'd been moved through so many foster homes so fast. Mom and Dad Wilson had stood me a lot longer than most could, about 3 years, and then I'd become a Christian. Right away, I'd quit hanging around on the street with my friends, and I'd quit the other things I used to do, like stealing from the stores and all that. But whenever I got mad, I always wanted to bust a window. I just couldn't seem to beat that one habit. Anyway, they let me go to church and do things with the church kids, but they weren't very convinced that I'd changed. I wondered if I should tell them about that note, "Beware the Juggler." Seemed like if I did, they would just worry and maybe think I'd been up to something sneaky. That's one thing I learned as a foster kid. Don't tell your foster parents anything to make them mad. I worried about it while I showered and got my robe on, and tucked the paper into my Bible and kept thinking about it while I was trying to read. Then after I was in bed, I kept thinking about it, and I finally decided I would ask Mrs. Bennett at church and do whatever she thought was best. The next day was clear and hot, and my shirt stuck to me through the whole ride on the church bus, and my tie felt too tight. The way I like to wear a tie doesn't look right, all loose and comfortable. I see pictures of these handsome guys in newspapers and magazines wearing their ties down like that, and they look cool and ready for action. But when I wear it that way, I look like a slob. So I keep it pulled up tight to my collar and the collar buttoned, and then I swelter and wish that somebody would invent an elegant T-shirt and give us guys a break. I meant to ask Mrs. Bennett about the note, but when I met her after Sunday school, she looked different somehow. Like maybe something was wrong, and I didn't know what to say. I never thought about things going wrong for her. They go wrong for me all the time, but she always seemed to be on top of things. But she didn't say anything different, only looked at me a little longer than usual, it seemed, and then led me to our seats. "Has your caseworker been over this weekend?" she asked. "No, not until next Friday," I told her. Then she did look troubled, and I would have asked her why, but it was time to sing a hymn and start the service. I forgot about the note with worrying about what was eating her. It put me in a sweat to have her wondering about my caseworker and all that. I wondered if I was in trouble, if I'd done something wrong, or if maybe Child Protective Services was going to give me a once-over for some reason. Back when I'd been bad, I'd come close a couple of times to going to what's called a group home. That's a place where they put the kids who act like jailbirds. It's not a reform school, but for some, it's the last step before reform school. I'd never cared before, but now I worried. Maybe somebody had reviewed my folder and thought I should be sent off somewhere before I could prove I'd changed. I didn't want to get sent away. She noticed I was in a sweat about wondering why she asked about my caseworker, and during the offering, she patted my hand. That's another thing about Mrs. Bennett. She always wears gloves and a hat to church. Not many women wear hats, and nobody wears gloves, but she always wears both. She says it's proper. The hat I can understand, but I don't know where the idea of gloves comes from. Like maybe little old ladies would want to start cleaning between Sunday school and church. "It's all right," she whispered. "You aren't in trouble. Settle down."